Hello, everyone. I welcome you to the ADHD self-advocacy webinar. I am Peter Freer. I am the founder and CEO of Play Attention. I have been in this field for close to 30 years. And so I am delighted to bring you the self-advocacy webinar on behalf of Play Attention. One of the things I'd like to do before we even get started is to ask you, since this is a world filled with distractions, if you would please turn off the distracting devices at your house. If you're not watching this on your tablet or your phone, please turn them off. If you are, please turn off your messaging so that we can fully focus together on the webinar. Because of all of our distractions that we have right now, it definitely affects the way that we're able to listen and to learn. So we're going to follow a very logical sequence today, understanding what ADHD is, identifying your needs. And if you're an advocate for your child, right, then we want you to be able to learn the skills necessary and to empower your child to learn the skills necessary. So we'll discuss that as well. And this will involve learning communication skills, as well as overcoming the challenges to those. But there are two critical things I want to identify right here before we go any further. Two critical things that I think you should know when we're talking about all of this is that two primary goals that I want you to leave with today, if we get anything done together, two critical goals I want you to leave with is that by the end of the webinar, you will know yourself well enough so that you know what your needs are that you need to advocate, right? Be an advocate for. And then we want you to know, since you do know what your needs are, you need to know how to get what you need. So one, we need to know ourselves well enough to know what our needs are. Two, we need to know how to get what we need. And that's the basis, the foundation for all of the webinar today. So obviously we'll start with understanding ADHD. And notice we put in the word your, because it has a unique impact on all individuals. Everyone with ADHD manifests different things. And we want to make certain we're talking about yours particularly as we move through this today. So as we are talking about it, we want to talk about the strengths and challenges and the importance of self-awareness, what I just talked about. Self-awareness, knowing what my needs are, and then knowing how to get what I need. Those are the two critical elements that we'll be discussing today as we move forward. So when we talk about the unique impact, it is particularly directed to the fact that you have particular either type of ADHD or subtle nuances toward the way that ADHD impacts your life. So if you look at the picture of all these people here, did you know that a few of them have just attention problems? They have problems sustaining and directing attention. They have attentional issues. A few of them have hyperactivity issues. And a couple of them actually have a combination of those things. Can you tell who they are? Not by looking at them. We can't. We have to understand that ADHD is a neurodevelopmental disorder that affects us all differently. So it's important that we have enough self-awareness to understand who we are, what our needs are, and how to get them. You'll hear me harp on that a couple of times. So we all, when we're working on understanding what our strengths are and what our challenges are, we understand that if we're ADHD, a lot of times we can think differently. I can think outside the box. I can brainstorm. I have big ideas. I am so creative. I'm unbelievably creative. Most of you realize that. And the fact is that we do have these great strengths associated with ADHD. I can hyper focus and get a project finished overnight if I have to. So these kinds of things are our strengths, but challenges impact us as well. If I can think differently, I get big ideas and I can brainstorm, but I have problems in organization or planning um, how to implement my big ideas, then we have challenges. So we have great strengths, but we also have great challenges. And so typically, if we're going to be a self-advocate, I have to understand what my strengths are, but I also have to understand what impedes me from getting to live kind of a fuller life, a life that's less challenging, where I don't have to work so hard just to keep up. Does everyone identify here with that? Excuse me. The fact that I have to work 3 times harder, it seems, than everyone around me? Yes, I thought so. And I still don't get as far as they're getting in life. And it's challenging. That's a major, major challenge for a lot of us. A lot of you have raised your hand to identify with that. So again, we have these great strengths, but we also have plenty of challenges. Now, here's again, I keep going back to the importance of self-awareness. Knowing what my strengths are, knowing what my challenges are, and how ADHD impacts me, personally impacts me, will allow us to tailor answers to address my specific needs. So this is very, very important. It's rather critical, crucial that we understand this. So when we talk about understandings and self-awareness, it's critical to recognize, right, the strengths that you have so that you can leverage them. By leveraging them, I am talking about how I can use them to my best benefit. For example, if I am able to hyper focus and I can use that to finish a project, fantastic. On the other hand, I have to acknowledge my challenges to get support and accommodations. And I think that this is important as well. If I do have the ability to hyper focus, then I think it's important for everyone to realize that I also have the antithesis, right? I have the challenges that if I can hyper focus and I can't plan and I can't organize and I don't have time management, then I think it's really important to understand we have to cope with all of that, right? Um, Michael said, I call these the super villains to my superpowers. I love it, Michael. That's an incredible metaphor, right? Uh, it really is the super villains to your superpowers. A couple of people have asked whether we are going to record this, and we are recording this webinar. So I will make certain at the end or we will send everyone a copy of it tomorrow after we get it finalized. All right. And at any time, if you do have questions, please feel free to ask. I will address them most likely at the end of the webinar for continuity. So if you do have a question, please do type it in the chat box. So in understanding your ADHD, number one, we know it's a neurodevelopmental disorder. In other words, it affects the way our brain works. Now, we also know that the impact for each individual is quite different. We're unique in that regard. We're common in that we all have a common factor is we all have ADHD, right? Most likely, if you're here, you have ADHD. So that's a commonality. But the reality is it impacts us all in different ways. And then fostering self-awareness. And this is a critical, and self-awareness is a skill. So if we have good self-awareness, it will enlighten us as to what our strengths are. And as what our challenges are. And this is, if you treat this rather than an exercise in, uh, life management, which for me at times seems awkward and cumbersome and boring. But if you're like me and you treat this as if you were a detective in search for our supervillains, as Michael called, you get interested because it's a matter of sleuth, being a sleuth and discovering and revealing, right? Those things that are our supervillains that impede us, that challenge us. I hope you enjoy that. I actually like that. And I like the fact that Michael, although I've never met you before, I think that was great. And I'm glad that we got there together. So if we are embarking on this journey as super sleuths to manage this and the impact on our life, then it enables us to get support. It enables us to manage our symptoms, and it allows us to get accommodations. Now, if you have been diagnosed as ADHD, you are, via the law, able to get accommodations. And we'll talk about that as we go through, whether that's it could be at your job, it could be at school. You are entitled to get them according to US law. So, but to get there, we have to know what we need. And this goes back to that initial saying, knowing who we are so that we know what we need, and then knowing how to get what we need as accommodation. So to identify your needs, right, these will include various aspects of your life, right? Whether, as I just mentioned, we're at school or at work, my relationships, whether at home or with family, with my colleagues, how it impacts my daily routines. And this is very important. We'll discuss all of this. And then self-care. These are very, very important aspects to manage my life, but also they can be supervillains. So identifying your needs at education and work. You may require accommodations, just to make certain that you're working optimally. If it's at school, you can oftentimes, and it is entirely allowed by law, to get extended time to take an exam if you have been officially diagnosed as ADHD. It can allow you to request preferential seating. So if the teachers put your child at the back of the room where they get really distracted, the teacher may, and you may request that they sit closer to the teacher so that the teacher can use proximity control, and that he or she could develop a signal with your child, which is just to come walk by their desk and put their hand on the desk, which just means focus, something like that. Or she looks at your child and just does something like this, which is very casual. Your child knows that means let's listen. So extended time in exams, preferential seating, or even assistive technology. Assistive technology is something like Play Attention, which I developed, close to 30 years ago, and it has been refined many, many times since then. So assistive technology is technology that enables you to work optimally, to learn the skills that we're talking about right now. That's assistive technology. Now, this is also one that is an extreme pain point. When I've worked with many thousands of ADHD individuals, and probably the most painful aspect of ADHD is in their relationships. Now, this is whether it's from friends, family, romantic partners. This has been an incredibly challenging aspect for most of the people I've worked with. If it is for you as well, you can raise your hand so that I can see if that is, wow, holy cow. Okay. Thank you. That tells me a lot about the audience here today. ADHD can impact my interactions with my relationships, because ADHD not only, it is an indirect effect of my communication skills. Typically, when I have ADHD, I don't have the communication skills that help me thrive in a relationship. I actually feel like my spouse may be, or my other half may be picking on me. I may feel that they're nagging me, that they want me to do something I cannot do. And so I do everything I can to try to make it look like I'm doing what they want me to do, even if I cannot do it. And that often is not an effective management strategy. I oftentimes have problems managing my impulsivity, maintaining focus during conversation. After a while, if I'm listening to my spouse and I have ADHD, or I'm listening to my romantic partner, my other half, after a while, it sounds like the old dolphin on Charlie Brown, right? It's dolphin speak after a while. So it's important that we learn to listen and have good communication skills. We'll talk about this. One of the things I think that we do when we have ADHD and we have relationships is that I don't want the other parties, whether it's family, romantic partners, friends, I don't want them to feel that I am weak. So I try to cover it any way that I can. I try to overdo rather than let them see that I have problems with my communication skills. I have problems finishing things. I have problems in being unable to follow through on commitments. So we don't want them to see that. Does everyone here identify with what I'm saying? In order to do that, I overdo. And that annoys them because they think I'm, kind of annoying when I do that. So this is very, very important that we understand how to develop the skills necessary. And this will be coming up. We'll talk about all of this. We're just identifying what our needs are and what particularly we need to do will be coming up. In identifying my needs, I need to know my daily routines. And daily routines are so good for us, whether we're ADHD or not. Good daily routines help us be productive, right? And it also, if we're really aware, self-aware, we can find out what those challenges are, the supervillains to our superpowers. So one of the things that we need to do in our self-awareness is identify the routines that really support my well-being. Identify them, whether that's adequate sleep or exercise or having a really structured schedule that I follow. That's one, right? That's a great routine. If I have those routines in place, that helps me go on a right path. But then I also have to recognize the potential challenges to the supervillains to my superpowers, that I have a real problem sticking to a routine. And I have to develop strategies that will allow me to stick to them, such as maybe a visual scheduler that pops up on my computer or my phone daily. I can set reminders on my computer or my phone. I can break my tasks into smaller, more manageable steps than having this one giant task sitting in front of me. There are all kinds of ways to do it, but we need to identify if these routines can be followed. I need to be able to understand how these routines help me, and then what challenges me into either letting them stopping the routines, or the challenges for me to even implement those routines. Self-care. Self-care, again, another critical aspect of managing my well-being, both mental and emotional well-being. So we have to be able to identify activities that help us relax, recharge our internal batteries, and manage our stress levels. This is what self-care actually is. And for a lot of us, we are so busy, we are the last person that receives self-care. We spend a lot of our day helping other people with self-care. And it's if you ever have heard about plumbers or carpenters, right? You go to their houses, their plumbing is awful. If you go to their house, their carpentry is their cabinets are falling apart. Their roof looks like a mess. So when we are, in a position where we are in a relationship, and we have other people in our lives that need help and care, we tend to put ourselves at the end of that line. Now, I'm not saying to put yourself at the front of the line, because we do have to take care of other people. But I am telling you that you have to prioritize the aspect of self-care so that you get it as well for your mental and emotional well-being. And if you don't, these are the supervillains again. If your supervillains are that I don't have good mental and emotional well-being because I don't prioritize self-care, then it even makes it harder for you to help the others in your life. Does that make sense? Do you follow? I think you can also look at hobbies and being mindful, meditation, spending time in nature, and remember when it's time for you to take breaks. These are all part of self-care. Taking breaks, knowing when you're too tired, taking breaks is critical. Don't try to plow through. Take a break. Let your batteries charge a little bit, then go back. Because what we're doing, if we don't take breaks and we don't look at our self-care, we don't examine it, our self-awareness is not up to doing that, then frequently we burn out. Everyone here probably recognizes what a burnout looks like. And it happens because we do not maintain balance in our lives. Making sense? I know it's touching nerves for a lot of people. A lot of people are chiming in on chat, saying, "Oh, this is me." I understand totally. This is why we're here. This is why we're doing the webinar. So in summary for this section, when we are identifying our own needs, when we are looking at the various aspects of our ADHD life, if you are self-aware, you can identify, proactively address the challenges. So this, by proactively addressing them, that means you are building a skill that makes you capable of being an advocate for yourself. And that can create environments that support your own well-being. So that means self-care, establishing my routines, understanding how I communicate. All of these are the skills involved. And while they are challenging, the first thing to do, excuse me, the first thing to do is become self-aware so that we can establish patterns, establish routines, establish schedules that help me become balanced in life and help me help others, myself included. Remember, self-care is critical. Talk about empowering your child, because one, typically a parent is the advocate for our child, but teaching your child to be a self-advocate is teaching skills. Now, if you do not have these, teaching your child actually can help you, because my master's is in education. One of the critical things we learn is that when we teach someone else, we learn ourselves. And a lot of times I used to use that at school. If I had a child that was struggling with a particular area in math, I would pick out one of the kinder students who was ahead in math, and I'd say, Billy has a real challenge in working on decimals. Could you give Billy a hand? And of course, when I watched that person try to teach Billy, that person was learning more themselves than just by me trying to teach. They were really learning in depth. So teaching your child the skills for self-advocacy is a good way for you to learn it as well. And when you're teaching them how to become a little bit more self-aware, you're teaching yourself. So this is a great way for you to do it. And then you can promote their independence and create a supportive environment. We'll talk about each one of these individually. But I do want you to know that if you feel that you need this, teaching someone else can be a bit of a challenge, but fun. When you are teaching or trying to empower your child to become his or her own self-advocate, remember we talked about you learning communication techniques to express their needs. So to do this, what you can do is role play with different scenarios with your child. And you give them the opportunity to advocate for themselves. If I know I'm distracted and I'm sitting toward the back of the classroom, I can go to the teacher at an appropriate time and say, I think I would do better if I were closer to the front of the room. Can you help me with that? And by doing this, we're teaching I statements. I feel, I think, I believe I would do better if I were sitting more at the front of the room. Now, I statements are really important when you're becoming an advocate for yourself. You want to use those statements to make certain that you're very clear that you understand what your challenge is and very clear as to what the goal is. So when I say, I can teach my child to say, I am struggling to hear you and to understand you from back there. I think it would be better for me to be up closer. That's a great way for a child to be a self-advocate. If you are an advocate for your child and you're in a meeting with a teacher, you can say, Billy thinks he would be better off, and I think Billy would be better off closer to your desk because he will be more likely to pay attention to you rather than being at the back of the room where he's very distracted. So again, using the I statements, teaching both my child to use them and myself to use them are really good. And we can role play those and teach each other how to do that. You should encourage them as you would yourself to ask questions. So when you are, trying to empower your child, you want to teach them to ask questions that would seek, kind of clarification. If I don't understand, then I should, and this is really very, very difficult for almost any adult as well. At university, whenever I didn't understand something, my hand was up. I would ask the professors exactly what they were talking about. I don't understand that, sir. Can you clarify? Can you repeat? Now, oftentimes my university professors were not friendly. They had a schedule they wanted to maintain. They did not want to take time to talk to me. But did it bother me? No. I asked away. I don't understand that. That is not clear to me. Can you clarify? So I'm using an I statement again. So it's very critical that I know myself well enough to do it, that I'm not scared to do it. I have the courage to do it. I'm not embarrassed to let somebody know I don't understand something. If you're married, your spouse will probably tell you, you don't ever ask me anything. You don't ask me directions. You think because we have an image that we're trying to fulfill. So you have to be brave and you have to have a little courage to go ahead and ask the right questions. Okay, dwelled on that long enough, but I hope that this resonates and that you follow. This is very, very important because we want to develop an autonomous individual. We want opportunities presented to our child so that they can take ownership of tasks. And the tasks can be very simple at first. Feeding the dog, bathing the dog, taking out the trash, cleaning your room. These small responsibilities foster an environment where they can gradually, as a parent, I can gradually increase their autonomy when they can be trusted to do these things. If they don't have the skills to do these things, then it's best that we reassess so that we can get them the skills they need. And by the way, this is something I put into play attention because these skills if you have an ADHD child, you can say, go to your bedroom. I want it cleaned up. I'll be up in half an hour, make certain it's good. You can come up a half hour later, and the only thing they did is make it to the bedroom. They're sitting on the edge of the bed playing a Game Boy, something like that. They have no idea what else was said. So typically, we get upset by that. The reality is they just don't have that skill. And this is why I mentioned play attention. That's what we develop in play attention. We develop these skill sets. And I'll talk about that more in a little bit. But this is incredibly important so that because we're trying to foster autonomous behavior. So this involves organizational skills, management strategies, coping mechanisms, and basically developing independence and self-reliance. And again, if they don't have the proper subset of skills, it's difficult. And you probably have experienced this in yourself, that you want all of these things, yet those supervillains are overpowering your superpowers. So we establish a creative kind of environment, a supportive environment. So I can advocate for my child's needs within the academic. I can go in and talk to the teachers, but I also want my child to be able to do it, him or herself. I also want to make certain that I give them, and by non-judgmental, I want you to be very, very clear. There have to be boundaries. I don't want you to think that there are no boundaries here. There's no structure. There is structure. We want to make a very structured environment where they do maintain schedules, but I want to make certain that we catch them being good. Because, and many of you will probably understand this if I say it, when we have to discipline a child, we are catching them being bad. How many times in a week do we catch them being good? Do we even think about that? Do you see how powerful that actually is? When we can catch them being good, we can reward, we can build this non-judgmental environment at home that allows them to understand I'm there to reinforce those good things that you do and enable you to do more of them. I don't want to just be the bad cop who comes in and gets upset when you're not doing things as requested. I hope this is making sense. We want to make certain that we can be their advocate at school. We want them to be their advocate. But this means that we should feel free to go in and collaborate with teachers, coaches, other caregivers at school to implement the changes that we want to see and help them with accommodations and strategies. In summary, for this section, by empowering the child to be an ADHD advocate, that's the initial step. That's what we're doing, is giving them essential skills that are great for all of life, not just at school. That's a good place to start, but for all of life. I hope everybody understands this. The word in this second to last sentence here is resilience. I want them to be resilient. I want them to take whatever bad news comes their way. Some life is filled with bad news. That's what life is. It's filled with good news. But if there is a challenge, we want them to be resilient, to bounce back. We don't want them to live on the dark side. And a lot of ADHD kids end up living in the dark side, self-medicating, all kinds of things. And I think you understand what I'm talking about. But we want to build it so that their confidence level is up, their skill level is up, and that they can bounce back. This makes them resilient. They can bounce back from anything, and they enable themselves to. They are their own advocates. But again, these are skills that have to be taught. And whether I need them in me, and I need to see them in my child as well. I hope that makes sense. Now, remember, I have harped on this throughout the webinar so far about communication skills and how it's necessary for all of our relationships. So I really want to talk about this as we go forward. So we're going to break it down into assertive communication, active listening, setting boundaries, conflict resolution, and then seeking support. So we've broken it down. Communication skills are essentially consist of these 5 particular skill sets, sub-skills. We will want to talk about how we do it, how we could practice them in ourselves, and how we could practice them within our child as well. So let's discuss these one at a time so we understand what we're talking about here. This is assertive communication. Now, I don't want you to equate assertiveness with aggressiveness. Assertiveness and aggressiveness are 2 different things. Assertiveness means a very confident way of communicating. Aggressive, angry, which implies some type of anger in communication, will do nothing for you, especially if you're in a romantic relationship, a marriage, long-term relationship. Anger really does not help anything. We all have moments of it, but that's not the way to use communication skills. Assertive communication. And again, assertive communication means using I statements. If I'm in a relationship with someone, I say, I hear you saying this. Am I correct? By asking that, by using an I statement, I hear you saying this. Am I correct in what I heard? Is that what you said? They will then come back to you and say, no, I said this, or yes, that's exactly what I said. Then you start using the I statements so that we're not blaming anyone. We're not accusing anyone, which would be more aggressive communication. Don't want that. I want to understand more. I want to learn more. So this type of assertive communication is the foundation. It's the beginning. Active listening. This is absolutely wonderful. When you are actively listening, it allows you to zoom in, zero in on the tone and tenor of what's being said, the speaker's words. Now, the brain is particularly adept at doing this. The brain, when we are using our attention, our listening attention, our auditory attention, when we are utilizing it, the brain is particularly akin to active listening. So as an example of this, you may have been at a party at one point. You saw somebody there that you hadn't been able to talk to, or maybe 2 people were talking almost across the room. Your brain can filter out the other noise in the room for the most part, and you can hear the words that they are saying. Anyone here identify with this? You can understand active listening? So the brain in its auditory attention network has the capability to use special filters, and the filters will allow us to listen. So that's what active listening actually is. It's allowing us to filter out the distractions around us So I can hear not only the speaker's words, but the way they are sitting, their body language, the tone and tenor. So I am really in tune with what they say. This is active listening. This is different than what we just talked about, which is assertive listening, which means that assertive listening gives us and assertive communication in general allows us to express our needs and also to establish boundaries when we're talking about maintaining, mutual respect and mutual understanding. Now, to make certain that happens, I have to be actively listening. So these all build upon each other. I have to be actively listening so that I can be assertive in the way I'm communicating my needs, but I also have to listen in return. So it's a give and take, right? The give is assertive communication, right? And then the take is actively listening to you. Critical to have both of these together. Setting boundaries. I just talked a little bit about that. The in setting boundaries, you really have to do this in a way that doesn't insult everyone, because very commonly with ADHD, we try to assert boundaries, but we're very aggressive about it. We don't know how to communicate our needs well for protecting our well-being, advocating for what we need. So we're overly aggressive about it. But if in this case we can clearly set our boundaries and communicate our boundaries in a firm and assertive manner, I think that we need to stop here. I think that's as far as I would like to take this. I feel I understand what you're saying and I agree with what you're saying. This is as far as I will take it right now. We're establishing boundaries so that we can calmly assert what we need and the limits, right? If we go further than this, then I would like a third party to come in and mediate. Again, you set the boundaries and you set it up so that we're not accusing, we're not being aggressive. We just want to make certain this is clear and we're getting our boundaries set. But remember, it all starts with the ability to practice our effective communication. So we're speaking well and clearly with I statements, then actively listening to the response, and then going back and saying, okay, here's where I'm willing to take this, setting our boundaries. Everybody see the cycle that we're in. Conflict resolution. And this Robert just mentioned, what if I'm overcome with fear? Right? And this is something that's really covered in this slide. What if I'm overcome with fear, being violent in emotion and voice when setting boundaries? I stay quiet, which doesn't help. Yeah, staying quiet is just not going to help, right? We want to make certain we realize that. But as we just said, Robert, it's a skill. And I tell you, I've been in martial arts since I was age 10, which is a long, long time ago. And it takes a lot for me to remain. And because when you deal with something that's nonsensical or person is highly emotional, it's easy to get involved in that, and you really don't want to. It is not effective communication. We want to be able to be clear and have what is called a non-zero sum game. Does everyone know that term, non-zero sum game? It's a product of game theory. When we talk about that, non-zero sum game is where you make a decision. A decision maker says, okay, I'm going to do this because it doesn't allow me necessarily to win over the other person, but it doesn't allow the other person to lose. So typically the common way that we would talk about it is, can we get a win-win here? Right? It's not a win-win game, or it is a win-win game. It's not a fact that one person's going to dominate the others. So I think this is very, very important. I'm not going to try to dominate with violence or aggression. I'm going to be assertive in what I need to tell you. I'm going to actively listen to you, but I am in no means going to be violent or aggressive in my response. And again, while I say it, you have to realize that this is a skill that you must learn. It's like learning to tie your shoes as a child. You couldn't instantly just tie your shoes. Someone had to show you how to do it. If you've ever played tennis, you have to learn how to swing that racket, otherwise the ball sails out of the court. You have to learn that skill. If you learned how to eat by yourself, that's a skill. Now, these are also skills that one has to learn if you are going to be able to manage self-advocacy. Because self-advocacy, you want to have happen as a non-zero-sum game. I want it to happen so that I'm not trying to dominate and win this thing. What's best for both of us? Where is it that we have a win-win here? We have mutually beneficial solutions, and we maintain open communication so that we don't have conflicts over it in the future. Right? You have to make certain that you're able to do this. Again, so many sub-skill sets here that you have to learn. But it's incredibly positive to do this. It can be, and I'm gonna go as far as saying, learning the skills that help with all of this and self-advocacy are life-changing, life-altering, because it absolutely impacts every facet of your life. So, that being said, we have to seek support. This is critical. So, a lot of times we don't reach out for support. Can anyone here tell me why you don't? I won't mention your name, but go ahead and type in why you don't. I don't reach out for support. Shame, lack of trust, because we feel like we can handle it ourselves. Yeah, shame of looking foolish, rejection, scare of rejection, don't know how to do it, embarrassed by doing it. So, is the common factor here fear? Right? Is it fear? Can we get to that as a root here? I'm afraid. I'm afraid I'm going to be shamed. I'm afraid I'm going to be embarrassed. I'm afraid I'm going to be rejected. As a matter of fact, we can have rejection. It can become so bad for us that we can have rejection sensitive dysphoria, RSD. Anyone here heard of that? It can stifle our life because we get so hurt by being rejected that things can go drastically wrong for us. But the bottom line typically is fear. Now, I'm going to, the other issue that someone else brought up, I think it was Michael, my super villain fellow, said, and this is salient, so I did want to mention him as well again, but the issue here is that I think I can do it myself. That's not fear. All right. I'll just do it myself. Now I'll have to use a Dr. Phil here. How's that working for you? If you're here, it's probably not working for you. I'll just do it myself. Right? Yes, and Danish says we don't have the ability to assess our capacity. There is actually an effect in psychology that we call the Dunning-Kruger effect. Does anyone know what Dunning-Kruger is in psychology? It's kind of fun. It's an overestimation of our capabilities. I'll do it myself. I can manage it. Well, in fact, we don't. It's kind of like going out with your friends. They all have a drink at the bar with you. They have a beer or something. And you look at one of your friends and you go, let me call you an Uber or I'll just drive you home. You're not really capable. And your friend goes, I'm fine. I'm absolutely fine. And then they get a ticket for driving while intoxicated on the way home. They way overestimated their capabilities in the situation. We have to have self-awareness. Remember, we started with self-awareness. We're circling back to self-awareness. We have to be able to be self-aware so that I do know what my limitations are. I know what my challenges are, and I'm not in fear of being shamed, of being rejected. And Robert asks, is this more common in ADHD? It is absolutely super common in ADHD. That big fear of being rejected, of not getting support, of being shamed, of being embarrassed. It's huge. But it's like this for almost, the rest of the population too. It's just amplified quite a bit in ADHD. So I'll give you an example of, in martial, I told you I have done martial arts since the age of 10. I'm an 8th degree black belt. And when you go into a confrontation with someone, I used to fight professionally. The brain starts going through all of these particular aspects of what would happen. Am I going to die during this match? Am I going to have my nose broken? Will I be knocked out? Will I be embarrassed? All of this starts going because fear is highly related, to human confrontation. What we are saying is that, fear is a challenge. It's one of the supervillains. It's an impediment. And almost everyone here probably knows who Mike Tyson is. As a matter of fact, Mike's going to fight again at age 65 and make many, many, many millions of dollars in that fight. But Mike's coach was an old fellow named Cus D'Amato. And Cus had one of the best sayings. He said, fear is like electricity. It can bake your bread or it can burn your house down. Just depends on how you use it. So when we are learning these life skills and we need support and we need to ask for support, we need to get guidance from our friends, our trusted friends, from mental health professionals, from family members, from healthcare providers, then you have to reframe it as, I am taking electricity and I'm using it to light my house. I'm not using it to be afraid of this. I'm using it to light my house. Reframe it. Reframing is crucial here. You're not going to be afraid to reach out to get the support. I don't care if I am rejected. I'll go to someone else. There is support out there for you. This is one of the things we do in Play Attention, by the way. You get an ongoing support staff so that you're not alone in doing this. Because getting support, going into getting online and using support groups online or in my community where I can connect to others that basically can share their insights with me and learn from their insight. I can learn from them. It's huge, but I can't be afraid to do it. So I reframe that. I'm using it to light my life up, to really seek that support. I'm using it to light my house. I'm not going to let it burn my house down. So in summary, right, we have to develop effective communication skills, active listening, being effective in my I statements when I'm using assertive statements to convey what I need. And one of the things that's also necessary is that when I am actively listening, I am conveying and demonstrating the fact that I can be empathetic. We want to make certain that we engage that when I am listening actively, I go, oh, I know how you feel. Absolutely understand that. I understand you. I feel that. I have walked in your shoes. Because when you are saying that and you mean it, they feel that there is a bond. We are sharing this together. We're sharing this life matter together. I'm not going to win. I'm not in this to be a victor. I'm here to help both of us. I'm here to make my my needs known. So this is really reflecting back after actively listening. I'm reflecting back that I understand this in the other person. All right. And we also talked about the non-zero sum game. It is a win-win. I'm not trying to be a winner. I'm seeing what's best for everyone involved. Make sense? All right. I know I'm running a little bit behind, so I'm going to speed it up just a little bit here. Uh, I want to identify common obstacles. This is navigating the supervillains that get in our way, the challenges. Developing resilience, we talked about that a little bit. Seeking resources and assistance. Building my support network, effective advocacy strategies, and celebrating success. So I'm going to go through this because we are behind. I'll go through it a little bit more quickly. We have to be able to navigate these challenges and build a support team. And this was addressed previously by me. Self-doubt, negative self-talk, your ability, they definitely impact. They make it very, let's say they impede your ability to advocate effectively. So we have to go in with bravery. In other words, fear can either bake our bread or burn our house down. In this case, I am going to use it to bake my bread. I am going to use it to light up my life. That is the reframing we need to all take right now to make certain that we're doing that. When you are doing this type of self-advocacy, right, and you're identifying these common obstacles, you can, with your support, by building a support network, who basically are your allies, you're on a team. So this is what we're talking about. We're building these things so that we are on a team that helps. I'm not on an island all by myself trying to do this, because you cannot do that. No one lives on an island by themselves. Seek help when you need it. Be brave enough to do it. Developing resilience. And this is for you as well as your child. Remember the ability to bounce back, right? You recognize those common obstacles, fear again, lack of confidence, resistance from other people, that you still need to cultivate resilience by, and this is what I have said a couple of times now, I'm going to restate it, reframing your setbacks as opportunities for growth, right? It can bake my bread, there's the growth, or it can burn my house down. I am going to reframe these setbacks or impediments as opportunities for growth. This is called a growth mindset. We need to look at it differently, not just out of fear, but embrace it, get hold of it, seek that support out. Now, building that support network is crucial, right? This is really, really crucial. You want to surround yourselves, and this is some advice when I started this company, Play Attention, 30 years ago, 1994. I had a very good set of attorneys, two attorneys that said, surround yourself with people who respect and validate your experience, and they will offer you nothing but encouragement and assistance and some redirection if you're getting off course. They'll advocate for you on your behalf. So it's not just you trying to go it alone. You're developing this team who will advocate with you. There is power in that. And there is a feeling of goodness that comes from that. You're helping them, they're helping you. Celebrate. When things go right, I know that we really, especially as ADHD individuals, we treat ourselves the most harshly. We really get critical, self-critical. Again, that's a skill that we want to get rid of. Self-criticism is one of those supervillain skills. Don't want it. We want to celebrate when we have a win and we have a win-win with someone else. We've solved the problem. We've met the challenge. We want to celebrate it. Now, you can give yourself a reward. If you're really in a good mood. Maybe you go out and you have pizza with your friends. Maybe you stay home and you watch your favorite movie and have some pizza by yourself. Whatever it is, celebrate it. Acknowledge when you actually do this well, because that kind of positive reinforcement creates a better environment so that you can repeat it and learn to repeat it. I hope this makes sense, right? I know we've gotten a lot of information in a very short amount of time, but please do. It's really necessary to balance out your life and celebrate when you're doing well. Don't catch yourself being bad. Remember this? Catch them being good. Catch yourself being good. All right. So in summary, right, we have to navigate challenges by resilience and reframing the way we view the world, not from fear, but as building my support network, asserting my needs, knowing how to get those as well now, and knowing the critical skills that are necessary to be behind all this. So that's basically just, as I said previously, this is life altering to be able to do these things. And it's all self-advocacy, learning how to do it and learning not to be afraid to be rejected. And it doesn't matter to me what they say, I have to be able to clearly identify. This is very, very important. And Donish says something, and I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly, something that changed my life was surrounding myself with people who value me and what I do. This is very, very true for all of us here. This is done by improving your executive function. Now, if you look at all of these skills here, right? Someone said earlier, what if I get too emotional and I'm angry? Well, that's called in executive function is a series of skills, cognitive skills that you have to do everything we talked about today. So managing your anger instead of being just assertive, that's emotion regulation. Mental flexibility, which is resiliency, the ability to reframe, to bounce back and say, you know what? Not afraid. Let's just do this. Let's go ahead and get this done. Right? Self-monitoring, self-awareness, so that I can look at what my strengths are and I can clearly see what my challenges are. Then I can begin to understand what my needs are, and then I need to know how to get those things that I need, those accommodations. Task initiation, being able to even start this. I have to reframe again. I'm not going in with fear. I'm going in to get a support group, right? George said, also my 12-year-old niece is afraid of being labeled, therefore she does not want to address ADHD, right? Because now there's a stigma. I am afraid of the stigma. I'm afraid of words. And that you have to help her reframe. Because it really is, if you need help, get help. If it's from a healthcare provider, if it's from your aunt or uncle, if it's mom and dad, seek it out. Please surround yourself with the people who are going to build you up and help you, right? But you have to be open to taking criticism. You have to be open to saying, yeah, you're wrong on that, and someone to tell you, you're wrong on that. You need to listen actively to what this person is saying. You're not listening actively. You have to take that and be able to do it. There is no fear. We reframe. This is a way to change our lives. This is a positive way to do it. My impulsivity is also one of those major factors in here that we have to overcome. Inhibitory control. So executive function, cognitive control, consistency, and support. By the way, that's all in the Play Attention program. That's why I created this thing. It is, again, life-changing when you use this. I am out of time, and I'm actually over time a little bit, but I really appreciate your attending. We have so many things going on in life. It's an amazing thing that technology allows us to sit here and get together. And so I thank you for being here. It's just always great. And I have such a fun time being able to talk to people who understand what we're talking about. It's just incredibly beneficial, I think, to everyone. So if you'd like, you can type in ADHD test. We will send you it. So, instead of listing out all these things and trying to mark it out on paper, if you take the ADHD test, it will identify your strengths and will identify your weaknesses. And you can then, if you want to talk about it with one of the support staff, then you can type in consultation right after that. So you'll get the test, then you can talk about it with someone about how to start and, start these major changes to your life. Type support website in the chat box. We have identified a really good support site, especially when it comes to what you are due as far as accommodations and the law are concerned. That would be the support website. So if you want to look at the support, it has nothing to do with play attention. It's just a great support site that we found so that you understand what the laws are for you as being labeled ADHD and what your accommodations can be, whether it's assistive technology like play attention, whether it is an extended time on test and so forth. So if you like that, we can send you that link to that website. The next play attention webinar, 101, if you want to be there, just type in webinar and they'll send you a link so you can attend the play attention webinar and see how it is we do all of this and how we can help you make changes in your life. My name again is Peter Freer, founder of Play Attention. And again, thank you so much. It's been a really great afternoon. Take care.